Hello, everyone. This is an extraordinary, important discussion we're having today with Rob Kaplan, the CEO and founder of Circulate Capital, along with Priyanka Bakaya, the CEO and founder of Renewlogy. We're talking about recycling. We're talking about getting plastics out of oceans. We're talking about saving the planet. Nothing less important than that. So stick around. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Rob, Priyanka, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for
Thanks,
having
Devin.
us.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you both back. We've had you on at different times before, and I've reflected often on our past conversations, and so wanted to have you back to continue the discussion because the work you're doing is so incredibly important. And Rob, I want to start with you for just a minute because you've had such exciting news that you've announced. In fact, we're recording this on July 19th, I think. So I think the news is one day old as we record this, brand new. Tell us about Circulate Capital.
Yeah, so we're really excited that we have evolved an initiative that's been in development for over the last year and a half, where we're now creating a new investment firm entirely focused on investing in companies, technology, and infrastructure that can prevent plastic from going into the ocean. More than half of the plastic that flows into the ocean comes from South and Southeast Asia, and it's because there's a lack of recycling and waste management infrastructure in these countries, and we want to solve that capital gap problem.
Wow, huge opportunity. What happens to closed loop partners as you step away?
So closed loop partners will maintain its focus on investing in similar areas, but in North America. My co-founder, Ron Gonen, is taking over as the sole executive leader of that firm, and will continue to deploy capital in recycling projects and innovations in the West. And as we decided to accelerate, given the rapidly developing and exponentially increasing challenges in ocean plastic, we realized that it needed to be done in a locally applicable way, not as a side project from a US-based entity, but something with full 100% leadership and staff and resources.
Excellent. Well, Priyanka, shifting gears just a little bit, remind the audience about Renewlogy. In fact, when you were on the show last, it wasn't Renewlogy. You didn't call it Renewlogy. Tell us about what Renewlogy is and what your current focus is.
Sure. So Renewlogy, our mission is to help find solutions for difficult to recycle plastics. And we do that through a technology that chemically recycles the plastics into new products such as fuels, as well as the building blocks of new plastics. And so we have two large-scale facilities, one in Salt Lake City, Utah, and one in Nova Scotia, Canada. And we're currently sequencing the deployment of more of those facilities across North America. And similar to what Closed Loop Fund and Circulate Capital have been doing, we've also been looking closely at the issue of ocean plastics and seeing how we can address that as a company. So we started a Renewlogy Oceans initiative, and really targeting on the key places where the plastic is entering the oceans. As Rob just mentioned, over 50% comes from that region in South Asia, Southeast Asia. And so our new product for the Renewlogy Ocean system is basically a small scale system of our large commercial systems that can be operated off-grid using solar panels and deployed at sources. We're targeting rivers, since it's the main rivers in these countries that are leading to the ocean plastics. And by deploying biofences to prevent those plastics from entering the ocean, we can collect them and create new products from those plastics that are collected.
It seems to me once a piece of plastic has spent some time in the ocean, it is difficult to recycle using traditional methods. Is that right, Rob?
It absolutely is. I mean, one of the biggest challenges in most forms of recycling that are implemented today is contamination. and it's highly contaminated on the land. After it spends a lot of time in the ocean, it will also have a high degree of contamination, which makes it difficult to use in many applications, especially consumer products and packaging that have expectations around quality and quantity, or if anything's food contact, for example, which, why sort of preventing it from getting into the ocean in the first place is really our focus. And, what Priyanka is talking about capturing it in the river before it gets too far out into the ocean is really important.
Yeah. So, Rob, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let me step back. I want you each to respond, but maybe Rob first. Why so much concern about plastic in the ocean? This is something we've ignored for a long time. And as a human population, I mean, every one of us, but as a general rule, we've ignored it for a long time, and it hasn't hurt us in ways that are obvious in our daily lives, right? So why are you concerned about it, Rob, and then Priyanka?
Well, I think there's two parts to your question. One is, why do we think this is an investable opportunity? And then also there's this question of why is everybody paying attention to this topic? And, on my Facebook page and, every other media outlet around there. And I think ocean plastic has really struck a nerve in the last year. And there's been a few key drivers to it. One is this research that has come out that has focused people on the solution. So we now have an understanding of where to start. It's not as big of a crazy idea as it used to be. The other piece is, as the advent of social media has crept into our lives, there's really graphic imagery that can come along with this environmental issue. Unlike most environmental topics like climate change, it's really hard to have a passionate reaction to, invisible gas. And especially, not only do we have the plastic in the ocean pictures, but we also have the animals, which, as we know, hits a lot of heartstrings for a lot of people. And then you've had a number of governments trying to get involved in this. And it's just changed the dialogue and the sense of urgency around this topic, as sort of a confluence of events. But, what we've been very interested in, why we think there's an investment path here, is this is about the economic development of some of the most rapidly growing countries in the world. In South and Southeast Asia, we've seen exponential growth of consumption, and as a result, exponential growth of waste and waste production, without the following through or the catching up of waste and recycling infrastructure. In the West, we had 150 years to build our waste and recycling infrastructure, and these countries are dealing with it in 10 to 15 year time increments. And so regardless of how this issue evolves, these countries will need to invest in this type of infrastructure and these types of businesses. And now's the time to invest if we want to attack the environmental challenges as well.
Yeah. Priyanka, what's your take on the importance of ocean plastic?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Rob just said. Some of these images of the tortoise with the straw stuck in its nostril, just really graphic images. And I've spent some time now doing these, plastic collection in the middle of the ocean, and people don't realize how bad it is there. And because of social media, you can now actually see these images, sitting in Utah, of the middle of the ocean, and just how bad the issue really is. And I think that sort of seeing those images, and then coupled with all these new research studies, like the study that has shown that by 2050, there'll be more plastic than fish in our oceans, and also just a better understanding of where the plastic's coming from. There was another study last year saying that about 90% might be coming from 10 major rivers. And so just sort of understanding where the plastic's coming from, what countries, I think it's, really helped companies and governments understand, how do we go about coming up with solutions, because waste isn't a local issue, it's really a global one. And so you can't sort of sit in a little box and try to solve it. You really need to think globally about it, which is great that I think, Circulate Capital's launched this initiative. It's really sort of an acknowledgement by brands who are investing in it that, we need to find global solutions to address this problem.
Have either of you given thought to solutions to the problem of the plastic that comes from fishing activity, right? Because that's plastic that is dropped into the ocean. It didn't come from land or consumer use. It starts out there. Have either of you given thought to that problem?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Priyanka.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, there was a study by the Ocean Cleanup last year that showed that in the Pacific Garbage Patch, around 50% of the material in there is from the fishing gear. And so it's a significant amount. And we found that as well with our cleanups, that a huge amount is coming from fishing gear. And I think there needs to be a lot of, solutions around that. So, ways to track, the fishing gear, maybe like a incentive system to make sure that the fishermen are bringing back all the gear that they're using. So there needs to be a lot of creative solutions around that, because it is a huge amount of the plastic waste, just because by weight, the fishing gear is much heavier. And then what it does in the ocean is it sort of acts as, a huge net that's picking up the plastic and collecting other material on it. So, by weight, it always ends up being sort of a huge percentage of what we're seeing in the oceans.
Rob, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, just as we think about the solutions to it, there are a lot of parallels to how we think about land-based plastic waste, which is what are the incentives to prevent people from dumping it? And right now, many fishermen or fishing vessels, the cost of dumping a broken fishing net into the ocean is free. And there's no upside to bring it home. So our big focus in that area, but then across plastic recycling and recycling in general, is investing in solutions for end markets. Companies or projects that have the ability to pay for that material over time will be key in driving that demand pull for fishermen, for waste pickers, for individuals, for companies to manage their waste appropriately. And the power of the market to drive that kind of pull, I think we have a lot more confidence in that than the ability of local governments to enforce it from a regulatory standpoint.
Great observation. It's great to get a sense that there at least is a strategy, a plan to address this ongoing problem. Priyanka, I wonder if you would tackle this other thought question that I've been thinking a lot about in recent weeks and months, but a lot of people are conscious about recycling and increasingly about reducing their output of plastics in the first place. There's a huge movement to ban straws right now, plastic straws. My wife and I have started carrying paper straws everywhere we go. But I worry that the real problem is that we're not buying and using recycled goods enough. What's your take?
Yeah, obviously there's many different layers to that issue. I think, we can all agree that single-use plastic has just sort of gone out of control, and that there's things that we can all do in our day-to-day lives to reduce the amount of plastic we're using. So, certain simple things like taking a reusable water bottle, reusable coffee cup, reusable straws. Those are simple things we can all do. But then, there's another layer of plastics that is just difficult to avoid, used in the medical field, just to get produce from point A to point B and keep it fresh. There is a need for plastics, and there aren't any easy substitutes. You can't transport everything in glass. That wouldn't be good for the environment either, because it's so heavy, and the transportation associated with that. So there's things that we can all do as individuals to reduce our plastic waste. But I think, we do need to be creative about solutions and making sure that the products we use have recycling end markets, and that we're, you know, supporting products that are made from recyclable materials. So it's, I mean, there's many different elements to the, you know, in the ecosystem. It's not as simple as saying no plastic altogether. I think, you know, using plastic is often the most sustainable thing to do, just because it is a lightweight material. But yeah, there's, you know, trade-offs in every material that you use, and making sure there's end markets for everything that you're using is the most important thing.
Rob, what would you add to that?
Well, I think this really speaks to the idea of a circular economy for plastics. And that even if you put all of your plastic in a recycling bin or in a recycling system, if there isn't an end market for it, then it will not be reused. It will end up either in the environment or in a landfill somewhere. And there's a huge opportunity for consumers to incentivize brands and companies and parts of the supply chain to use more recycled material. When I work with many of the world's largest brands, consumer brands, and when we ask them to use more recycled content, their initial feedback is, you know, our customers aren't interested in it. If we can do what we're going to do what we can, and they all have commitments, and we're working to help them meet those commitments. But certainly if there were more consumers interested in using recycled content and choosing those products as part of their shopping experience, that would build the market, and that would increase the demand pool that we were talking about earlier.
Give us a tip or two for identifying recycled products so that we know how to choose.
Some brands will talk about it. You'll find it on their packaging, but you're right. Most companies, because of this reality about how most consumers are not considering this in their decision making, it's not worth the packaging space to put it on, you know, a small bottle, or because that's not how people are making their decisions.
Yeah, interesting problem. Rob, I want to ask you to start in on this last piece of the discussion. China in the last year or so has all but stopped taking plastic from the United States for recycling, and it was the primary market. And I wonder if you would just talk about the implications of that and how that's rippling across the global economy and affecting us, and what the reaction to it should be from government policy, people, individuals, consumers, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's no question that China's ban is revolutionizing the recycling market globally. In many parts of the Western world, so US and Europe, as much as 40% of a recycling market was sent in export to China. If you're running any kind of business and 40% of your customers disappear, you're in real trouble. And that is creating a huge hole in the recycling system around that end market. But that, you know, over-reliance on a single export or a single market is also a problem. And that has sort of held back a lot of investment in innovation, domestic processing capacity, and even operational investments to make sure you're cleaning up your material as much as you can. If you've got one buyer that requires a certain spec and it takes more time and effort to meet that spec versus the export market that will take whatever you want to send them, you'll do the export market. So we're seeing a number of new investment opportunities, sort of projects that have been sitting on the shelf without really the right ROI on it. But now that this market has dried up, we're looking at a lot of investment opportunities that can help domestically process that material. And then that's affecting international markets as well. So places like Indonesia and Thailand and Vietnam, many of them were sending their recyclables to China as well, and they no longer can. So they have domestic investment opportunity and need to follow along with it.
Priyanka, what's your take?
Yeah, no, as Rob mentioned, it's really opening up a lot of local opportunities to find domestic solutions to handle this material. And, you know, as for Renewology, it's opened up a lot more interest in our solution in communities around the country. We started working with Boise this year, who in January actually banned residents from putting 3 through 7 plastics in their recycling bins, and in the wake of the Chinese import restrictions. And instead they've given them these orange bags in a program that's sponsored by Dow and Hefty. And they basically put all the difficult to recycle materials, including materials they were never able to put in their recycling bins before, such as chip bags and candy wrappers and, you know, disposable utensils and that type of material. And they put that material in these orange bags, which are then collected on a truck and sent to our facility in Salt Lake City for us to chemically recycle it back into fuels. And we're seeing a lot more communities around the country interested in programs like these, and, you know, wanting to learn more, because it just simply isn't economic to put those low value plastics through the whole MRF system, which is, you know, a very expensive system to be putting materials that aren't, you know, ultimately going to have any value at the end of the line. So this is a great way of keeping it out of that system and pulling it out before it even enters the system, and, you know, sending it to something that can be used to create, you know, new low carbon fuels.
Now, it seems to me, Rob, if I understand your business correctly, you should be helping entities in Asia to buy Priyanka's equipment. You should be financing that. Am I thinking about your businesses correctly?
Yeah. Talked about this the other.
Put you on the spot.
Actually, as you sort of put this conversation together, Priyanka and I reconnected and chatted yesterday about what those kinds of opportunities would look like. You know, one of the biggest challenges we see is less on the technology side, but more on like who's going to operate this on the ground in Indonesia. There in the US, you've got companies that have been operating recycling businesses or waste businesses for decades. We don't have that in Indonesia and Vietnam and Thailand and India. There isn't the local expertise and talent that are ready to put that to work in a way that you know is going to be successful. So that's a big part of our focus, is how can we match our financing and capital with technology like Priyanka's, but also with operators on the ground who can execute against it.
Would you consider projects in Haiti or other Caribbean island nations?
Yeah, Haiti has had a lot of projects in it, you know, just because of its connection to the U.S. From a philanthropic standpoint and its proximity. There's a lot of interest in sourcing ocean-bound plastic from Haiti, and there are a number of companies operating there. Puerto Rico has also recently come up as just in the context of the rebuilding. There's opportunity there, but this question of the island solution is the same problem the Caribbean faces, and it's the same problem an archipelago like Indonesia faces, which is the longer you have to transport, or the further you have to transport this wasted material, the less value it has. And there's not a lot of domestic processing capacity on a Jamaica right now. So there's a big question about what's the right model to build and how do you invest in that model.
Yes, but interestingly, Priyanka, it seems like all of those places could use less imported fuel. So interesting opportunity there, it seems. I want to wrap up. I could talk to you both all day, and I'm sure our audience would like to keep listening to your thoughts all day. But in fairness to you and your time and your commitments, we should probably wrap up. But I want to ask each of you one final question. Priyanka, maybe we could start with you. What is the accomplishment or achievement that you've notched so far in your young career that you are most proud of?
Yeah, I would say just being able to, you know, I started this process when I was in school at MIT, and it was just sort of a lab scale system and a dream. And I think really being able to build commercial scale facilities now and have them in 2 locations and hopefully soon in many more. I think, you know, that's being able to see sort of your little vision become a big one. It's, that has made me most proud, but there's a lot of work to go. There's a lot of low value plastics out there that we need to find a solution for.
Rob, you've done a lot. You too are a young guy with a lot of accomplishments. What are you most proud of having done?
I'm incredibly proud of helping co-found and develop this unique impact investing model where we can leverage the capital and power of large multinational corporations and connect it to solutions that enhance their supply chain and prevent waste from getting into the environment. We built the leading firm for that in the US, and I'm so proud to be able to expand that to regions of the world that need it even more.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Rob, Priyanka, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us. I know your time is extremely valuable, but maybe Priyanka and then Rob, let me ask you just to tell people who are listening and watching to how they can learn more and how they can connect with you personally, because I know people will want to connect with you.
Sure, you can find more information on our website, renewology.com, and on social media, our handle on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram is all at Renewology. So please follow us and you'll get ideas on what you can do to get involved.
Great.
Yeah, and you can find us at circulatecapital.com. We just published our new RFP, so we are looking for investment opportunities in South and Southeast Asia. So you can fill out an application there. And then we're on social media at CirculateCap, and I'm at Robbie K, ROBBYK.
Fantastic. Well, Rob and Priyanka, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We wish you every success in cleaning the oceans and turning all of this plastic that we use into wonderful new products and saving the environment and saving the planet and all that you're doing. I mean, total success to you both.
Thank you,
so
Devin.
much,
And same to you.
All righty. Let's do some good.
Thank you for listening. Devin Thorpe's mission is to end extreme poverty, improve global health, and mitigate climate change before 2045 by finding and sharing the stories of those who are doing the most good. You can join with other listeners to accelerate Devin's mission by visiting helpdevin.org right now.